everyone, I'm Rachel and I'm your host for the Merry Writer podcast. This week, unfortunately, Ari had something come up and she couldn't be here, but I am joined by a lovely guest. And we are on episode 319 asking, who is Jill Haymaker? Before we start, don't forget to visit and follow our coffee page where you can access lots of goodies for free. And if you're in a position to support us, you can become a Merry Writer for $2 a month and get access to exclusive content. Everything we earn on coffee goes into keeping the show going, and we appreciate any support. Now, this week, we're getting to know Jill Haymaker. Jill is a contemporary Western romance author with several short stories published. She writes the Montana Pines series, which currently has 8 books available now. Jill, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to meet you, and I look forward to getting to know you.
Sounds good.
So, what inspired you to begin writing in the first place?
I have a very weird, I guess kind of weird, different writing story. I was an attorney. I am an attorney for
Oh.
many, many years. And there was an attorney who was down the hall from me who started writing fiction, and she loved it. And she'd come down to my office and talk to me about writing and, asked me to review and critique things she'd written. And she had a husband in the tech industry, and she didn't need to work. And she eventually quit to write full time. We just met on a kind of semi-regular basis and kept in touch. And this was at a point where the law business was pretty slow. And so I went out to lunch with her one day and just mentioned the fact that I was really bored at work. There wasn't enough work to keep me busy. And I had to be in my office from 8 to 5 every day. And I started bringing romance novels to work and just sitting there reading because I had nothing else to do. There was no work to do. And I talked to her about how unproductive I felt. And she said, well, why don't you write a book? And I was like, I can't write a book. I know nothing about writing fiction. I have no desire to write fiction. I don't know anything about it. That's your thing. And she said, well, you never know until you try it. What do you read? And I said, I read romance. And she said, well, why don't you write a romance? So I went back to my office. I was 58 years old. I'd never written anything other than legal stuff. I'd written a lot of legal briefs and legal arguments and motions and very left brain kind of writing. And I sat down that day and said, well, maybe I could write a book. I came up with an idea. 4 months later, I had a book. Not a great book, a horrible book, actually. But I sat down and wrote a story, and I liked it and kept doing it. So I guess I credit my friend. If it wasn't for her, I never would have started writing. It was nothing I ever would have come up with on my own.
I was just about to say, yeah, it sounds like you really just had your friend in your back pocket and she really helped motivate you to try something different, try something new.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating.
And it was so interesting how different writing fiction is from writing what I was used to. Because writing legal stuff is very planned. It's very, you have to do a lot of research and then you write it all down and it's very fact oriented. And all of a sudden I start writing fiction, and anybody that writes fiction would know this. And if you don't write fiction, it doesn't make sense. But your characters kind of take off and write the story and do things you don't expect them to do. And it sounds crazy, but it's true. And
It is true.
yeah. So that's how I started writing. So I did not start writing young in life. I was a lot older and I started doing it, and I did it. I eventually got to the point where I was writing half time and doing law half time. And then I moved. My daughter is an ER doc, and she'd gotten through residency and she was moving out of state, getting ready to have her first child, wanted me to move out of state with her to help her out. And so I did that. And when I did that, I just quit practicing law and started writing full time. And that was in 2017. So it's been almost 10 years that I've just been writing full time now.
Wow, good for you. What an achievement. Because I feel like a lot of writers, whenever they decide that they want to start a book, so many people think that they do have to start it as early as possible in their life.
Mm.
And once they reach a certain age, they think that it's quote unquote too late to start writing a book. But really, you can start writing a book whenever you want. As soon as you have an idea, just write your thoughts out. And soon enough, yeah, the characters will make you feel crazy and they'll take your idea and they'll run with it. And before you know it, you have a book.
And it's so fun. I really like it. I always say I went from unhappily ever after to happily ever after because I write romances, which are all happily ever after. And when you do legal work, people aren't happy. The thing I always say they didn't tell you in law school is when things are going well in your life, you don't need a lawyer. So pretty much everybody that comes into your office is unhappy. Something has gone wrong in their life is why they're there. So that was one of the things that really burns you out, burns a lot of people out on practicing law, is just that you're dealing with unhappy people all the time. So to deal with happy characters falling in love is way more fun.
Oh, okay, because that kind of answers my next question because you said that you started writing romance because you typically read romance,
Right.
but I'm I'm kind of curious why you chose to write romance instead of like trying mystery or legal dramas or something like that. Did that genre ever occur to you, or did your work like taint that genre too much?
I think when I first started and I knew so little, and people said, well, write what you know. So I started probably reading romance novels when I was in maybe high school, at least in college. So I'd read them for many, many years. So I felt like I knew what a romance novel was a lot more. I mean, I've read other genres, but I read a lot of romance and I just liked them and I liked the idea. And when I started writing them, I really enjoyed writing them. So I just have kept doing it. I have thought over the years, I have 36 books out right now. I'm working on number 37.
Wow.
I've thought at times about, trying some different genre. I wrote one book, gosh, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago that is kind of a standalone book. It's not in any of my series, and it's more women's fiction. It's more the journey. There is romance in it, but it's more the journey of my heroine than being a straight romance. But that was hard because I've written romance for so long. So I enjoyed writing it, but it didn't make me say, oh gosh, I want to do this now instead. So I haven't done another one. I don't know. I probably could write a mystery or something if I wanted to try, but you develop your readers and you develop your super fans and they read your books because they like what you write. And I've heard that it's hard to get them to follow you to another genre. I don't know. I haven't tried it, so I don't know for sure if I could how I do if I tried to write anything else. So I've just pretty much kept writing romance.
Yeah, that makes sense. And honestly, if you're enjoying the romance, then there's no reason for you to branch out into any other genres. I was just curious because I read a ton of cozy mystery and
Okay.
I love it when there are nuggets of the law and legal drama and courtroom drama. I love I eat that up. I love watching those types of TV shows.
I get that question all the time.
Oh, really?
Why don't I write legal stuff? Because I was a lawyer for so many, I don't practice now, but I'm still a lawyer, but I've been a lawyer for so many years. I always get that question of why aren't you writing law stuff? Why? And there are courtroom scenes in my books. There are lawyers in my books. Not all of them, but there is some of that in there because it's something I know, so it pops up.
Oh, okay. I mean that's great. Yeah, because I love that type of stuff and I love it when even though it's fiction, I love it when there's the factual evidence
Yeah,
of, the writer doing their research when it
right.
comes to the law and legal practices and investigation and all that stuff. So, yeah, I would be fascinated to read a mystery or something from you who has so much background in that subject.
Yeah, and I get very upset. I mean, that's one of the things that I've always focused on in my writing is, if you're going to write something, you need to know something about it because there are a lot of books where they put
Yeah.
legal scenes in there and they're ridiculous. I mean, there's TV shows that do that, where it doesn't make any sense, where you're yelling at the TV like that couldn't happen in a courtroom or that wouldn't happen in a case or the book I'm writing right now, and I don't know if I've done this before, but the beginning of the book, it's not going to follow what happened, but the beginning of the book I took from a real case that was crazy, a case I did that was so nuts, a divorce case that just didn't make any sense to me that what had happened. So I'm kind of stealing the beginning of this lady's story. And
Oh,
it
that's
starts my
fascinating.
book because the things her husband had done were just crazy. I mean, they were just kind of out there. So, but I think anything you write about, I write about my books are all Westerns. I had 3 series that took place in Colorado. Now I have one in Montana. and like on ranches and guest ranches and stuff. And there's people that try and write about that I swear grew up in New York City or somewhere, and they write it, and it's so, if you know that world, it's so bad because they did no research into what that world is really like. So I try and be accurate as much as possible.
Yeah, well, there's like that fine line with fiction. It's,
Yeah.
it's fiction, so it's made up. So on the one hand, you can make up a certain amount of bits, but I like it when there's little nuggets of truth in there, you want to make it relatable and believable to a certain point.
And to the people that know about that world. I mean, there's people that read your book. I read a book once by, when I first started writing, by a New York Times best-selling author. I won't mention her name, but she's a big deal. And she wrote historical romances. And I started reading this book, and her characters come to Colorado in the middle to late 1800s. And everything she wrote was so historically wrong about the towns, about
Oh.
the railroad they were traveling on, about my town. She wrote about my town where I live. And it was all wrong. Um, and and it was a good story. And I could see why she was a good, a famous writer. It was very well written. But the fact that she got all that stuff wrong. Now, probably 90% of the people that read her book had never been to Fort Collins, Colorado, and didn't know the difference. But if you were from there and you got it all wrong, I mean, it wouldn't have taken that much research to research the history of our city to know what our city was like in the 1800s. But she didn't do that. And it really turned me off. And I think it turns off readers that know what you're writing about if you don't write accurately, even though it's fiction. I mean, it's fiction. I suppose you can make up anything you want, but if you put real places in there, which is why all my towns in my books are not real cities because I don't want them to be wrong.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. I get that. And I think, being an author, one of my favorite parts of writing is doing the research.
Yes,
And I like learning new things and being able to twist that knowledge into something fictional and sharing that with my readers. And I think if you're going to write about a real place, and I know, granted, like the majority of our audience, our listeners on the podcast are indie authors. I'm an indie author, and a lot of us, we're not making a full-time income from our writing. So I get it if some people don't have the means to do this. But if you are going to write from a real place and set in a real place, it would be such a great opportunity to go visit that place and go
right.
travel and immerse yourself in the culture and the food of wherever you're going.
Which is why I still write about the West because I know the West.
And I think that's great.
And it's easier, if I tried to write a book about New York City, I would screw it up really bad because I've never been there, and I've heard of New York
Yeah.
City. Obviously, we all know, the big city and we've watched TV shows
Yep.
and stuff, but I would be afraid that I would screw that up so bad because I've never lived there. And somebody who lived in New York City would be like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous.
Yes. Yep. No, I'm the same way. Most of my New York City knowledge is from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
That's it. So, with the Western romance, what's your favorite part of writing Western romance?
I love the mountains and I love the cowboys and there's horses in my books and I like that lifestyle. I don't live in the mountains. I live on the Front Range in you know, in a town, but not a real big town. There's 10,000 people in my town, but I don't live in the mountains, but I go to the mountains as often as possible. Worked in the mountains when I was like in college and stuff. And I just like being up in the mountain. I just like the whole cowboy thing is kind of cool.
No, that sounds great.
And the small town, the small towns, my romances are all small town romances. So I like the feel of the Western hospitality and the small towns and that kind of thing. So that's why I write it.
Yeah, it's the atmosphere.
Yeah.
No, that's nice. And the horses too.
And the horses. I love horses. I don't own horses, but I work with horses every week and I go up and ride horses in the mountains. And I grew up with horses. I had horses when I was a kid. So I,
Uh,
I like having
that's so
horses in my
cool.
books and other animals. There's a lot of dogs. There's a lot of cats. You can tell I've got my little buddy and there's a lot of animals in my books. People have a lot of pets and that play some a lesser role and some that play a major role in my stories.
Oh, I like that. I always love a good book that has like animal companions in
Yeah.
it. It's funny because you read some books and you watch TV shows and movies and almost none of the characters have pets or anything like that
Yeah.
because obviously they wouldn't be able to go out and do whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
But I like it. It feels more real to me because I have a bunch of pets
Do
too.
you?
So I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've always had animals and been around animals. So yeah, it seems like it would be a weird life for them not to have a pet. So
Yeah.
I don't know if not all my characters, but most of my characters have a dog or cat or horses or some kind of animals.
And you get to live vicariously through them, so you can give them as many pets as you want,
Yes, there you go.
even if you can't have them in real life. Now, you're an indie author
Yes.
with your many, many books. What are some of the things you've learned over the years about self-publishing?
Oh gosh, I've learned everything about what haven't I learned about self-publishing. I guess things that I didn't think about when I started was how, especially if you're self-published, and I think somewhat if you're traditionally published too these days, is you spend at least half your time marketing and
Ugh,
doing
yeah,
things that aren't writing. I mean, I just thought, I can become a writer and write 40 hours a week, and you don't. A lot of what you do is marketing and trying to figure out how to sell your books because it doesn't do you any good to write the best book in the whole world if nobody knows it's there and nobody reads it. And so I've had to put on that marketing hat. I don't love it. If I was a big enough author that I could pay somebody else to do my marketing, I would. If I was Nora Roberts, I wouldn't ever do marketing again in my life, but or I don't think, no, I'll ever get to that point where I'm rich enough to just pay somebody else to do it. So how much time you spend marketing and, doing other things like formatting and doing book covers and just, wearing so many hats, doing other things rather than just the fun part is sitting there writing your story and the how small a part that actually is to what you do on a daily basis. But I love self-publishing. So going back, so when I first wrote my first book and gave it to my friend and she said, "Well, I like your story, but it's awful." I didn't know what POV was. I didn't know anything about writing. So I joined her
oh,
author group. I started going to conferences and taking online classes and joining groups and starting to learn how to write. It was about 2 years after I wrote that first book that I actually published it. But I started going to conferences and talking to editors and agents about publishing my books. I was older when I started writing. So one of the things that I really wanted to do when I start writing was write romance about older characters. Because back then it was really hard to find a romance about older characters. And even though I loved romance, I was reading romances about people that were the age of my granddaughters. So it was
yeah.
hard to relate to them anymore. I mean, I was saying romance, the two important things is that your readers identify with your heroine and they fall in love with your hero. That's kind of that's what you're trying to do in romance. And it was hard for me to do that about somebody who was the age of my granddaughter. So I wanted to write
That makes
romances
sense.
about older characters. So my characters in my first book were 54, 55, I think. And I, wrote the little elevator pitches and went about, I'm going to sell my books. And everybody, the first thing that I'd open my mouth and say, my heroine's 54. And they say, well, you have to take 20 years off her age or we won't even look at it. And
Huh.
that was the climate then. I think it's gotten a little better now. It's gotten a little better in Hollywood now, where you see more older characters in, stories, and there are a lot of groups and a lot of seasoned authors out there now. But 15, 20 years ago, there just wasn't that much. And so I was faced with the dilemma after I talked to a few people is I've either got to change my books and write about younger people, or I'm going to have to look into the indie publishing route. Because I never thought about it. Because when I started writing, I didn't know anything about writing and I knew nothing about publishing or putting a book together. So I just assumed, well, I'm going to write a book and somebody's going to do the rest of that for me. Um, but it didn't work that way. So at that point, I decided, okay, I'm going to go the indie route. And that's what I've done ever since. And I like it because I'm independent. I can do what I want. I'm not on somebody else's schedule. Uh, I'm not meeting somebody else's deadlines. I mean, I obviously have deadlines I set for myself, deadlines with my editors and stuff like that. But I'm on, pretty much do what I want. So I like that. And maybe because I'm 72 years old now, so I don't want to be on somebody else's schedule.
Yeah, well said. Good for you. I'm really glad that you chose the indie author route because one of the main reasons why I don't want to do traditional publishing because I don't want somebody to read my book and say, "Oh, you have to change this
Yeah.
major point of your book." And it's just, it's I know from a business standpoint, they know best, if you will, but when it comes to the creativity and your characters and your plot, you're the one that knows the book best. And there's an audience for every book.
Yeah.
I don't think if you had knocked down your heroine 20 years, there absolutely would have been an audience for that story too, but I'm glad you stuck with your guns and you kept writing what you wanted to write.
So original intent was I was going to write all about older characters. But my original intent wasn't even to write a book, let alone a series. But then after I wrote that first book in this little town called Peakview, that was my first series, I wanted to start a series and I realized I wanted to write about that town. But I wrote in the second book, the characters were in their 60s. But then I realized that everybody in that town couldn't be older. And if you were writing a series about a town or a place, you couldn't, I mean, you really couldn't write all older characters. It didn't make sense. So now I still write a lot of them. But I looked it up the other day and it's like 40% of the books I've written are about older characters. The other 60% are about characters in their 20s and 30s or 40s. I mean, I've written the oldest book, I wrote a Christmas book, which I still love, probably 10 years ago, about these two characters who were 89 and 91, and they lived in a assisted living facility. People love that book. It was one of my favorite books. I had to go to a bunch of assisted living facilities, interview residents, so that I would get that part of life right, because that was a part of life
Oh,
that I
cool.
hadn't experienced yet. And that was a really fun book to write. So that's my oldest characters. I think my youngest characters are like 21, 22. But I write all different ages. But I still like writing a lot of books about characters that are more my age or, because you can fall in love at any age. Romance doesn't ever die, I think, till you die. So it's all different ranges. So a lot of my, I don't know what you call them, super fans, people that read all my books are older women that like reading books about characters that maybe are a little bit older.
Yeah, see, you got that relatability down pat,
I hope so.
and you're just casting the net and you're just catching as many readers as possible.
So I have three series that all took place in this little county I made up of Peakview, Colorado. And there's three different series there that are 26 books before I switched to Montana, which is my latest series. It's not all in the same series, but I wrote romances about three generations in a family.
Oh, cool.
So the original book was about these people in their 60s. And then in that book, he met a daughter he'd never met. And she was in her 30s. So then a couple books later, I wrote that story because people wanted to hear what her story was. And then probably 10 years later, I was writing another series and had the opportunity to bring back her daughter, who had been a teenager at that time and would have now been in her mid 20s. And I wrote her story. So I had these three generations of the same family that I wrote romances about. So that was kind of fun.
That's really cool. I like that. Now, you started writing kind of sort of by
Yeah,
accident. The whole writing
I would
thing
say
just kind
that.
of fell in your lap. If you knew back then that you would have over 30 books published, what would be going on in your mind?
Oh, I never would have thought I could do it. I would have never thought that, yeah. I mean, I didn't think I could write one book. When I sat down, when told me to go back to my office and start writing a book, I sat there and, opened my computer and said, okay, I'm going to write something. But I didn't really think I'd get through the first book. I mean, I didn't think, it wasn't like a plan, like I'm going to become an author. It was just like, I'm bored. I want to be productive. Let's try and write a book. So, yeah, I never would have believed I would have written all these books. I also write a lot of stories for Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Oh, yes,
So
yeah.
that's a little bit different writing. Those are short stories and they're true. They have to be true stories. So I think I'm in 12 of their books now. So every once in a while, I
Wow.
write books for I just had two come out, one in February and one in March, new Chicken Soup for the Soul books. But those are true stories about your life. So those are kind of fun. That's a little bit different kind of writing that I do.
Yes, years and years ago, I submitted a couple of pieces to to a few Chicken Soup for the Soul books. I never got accepted, but I know those books, and they're wonderful and they're fascinating stories to read.
That's an interesting story too, kind of. So it was like in August when I'd written this first book and I took it to my friend and she said, I like your, your story, your premise, whatever, but she says you need to learn writing techniques. Why don't you join my writers group? And there was a local writers group here that she belonged to that met monthly. So I go to this writers group and it was like 20 people and I was encouraged by the fact that they were all writing and they were all at different levels. I was very discouraged by the fact that most of them said, oh, sometimes it takes 4 or 5 years to write your first book, and then it takes forever to get it published. And maybe being an attorney, I'm kind of a results oriented person. So I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'll keep doing this if it's just going to take forever to ever get this book out there. And so there was a lady in our writers group who started talking one day about how she submitted stories to Chicken Soup for the Soul, and I'd read them. When my daughters were teenagers, they loved Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and so I thought, she goes, you just, and she told me how to do it, or told us how to do it. You can go on their website and anybody can submit a story, and maybe they'll accept your story. So I went on the website, looked at the possible book topics, sat down. This was like in November of that year that I'd first started writing, and I wrote 2 stories. There were 2 topics that I thought I could write a story on. So I wrote these 2 topics and I sent them off. And, when you send them off, they say, if we don't accept your story, you're never going to hear back from us. It just,
Yeah.
push the button, send it in, and we get 5,000 submissions for the 101 stories in each book. So, so I didn't hear back from them and I just forgot about it. Went on writing, started writing a second book. And in May that year, all of a sudden I get an email from Chicken Soup for the Soul saying we have, selected one of your stories to be in our book. And then 3 weeks later, they accepted my other story for another book. So I was like, wow, this is cool.
Oh, look at that.
And then
Wow.
then later that fall, when those books came out, which was before I ever published my first book, I could say I was a published author because I had stories in Chicken Soup for the Soul. Now, that was very fluke. Since then, I've probably submitted 100 stories to them, and I have 12 stories that have been published. So, there's a lot of them that they don't pick, but my first 2 stories got picked. So that's how I started it and kept writing for them.
Oh, well, congratulations. Good for you. Because that's obviously not an easy thing to do.
It's very different. And I think they get to know you after a while. I mean, the editors there know me now
Yeah.
because I've written enough stories that maybe they kind of like your stories. I don't know. It's like any publishing site. It seems like they get to know you and you go on some different list than people that they don't know.
Yes. Yeah, once they see your name pop up enough times, you probably have so much credibility built up that they just they're like, "Oh, we recognize this writer and we know that she's good."
Yeah.
So, probably go in a different pile.
It's like the promo sites I do. Sometimes I'll start with a different promo site and it'll take me forever to get them to accept one of my books. And then once they do, then they'll accept all your books. So I figure they just, now they recognize your name and it's easier.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's great because that's part of marketing and it's part of networking and you have to build those connections.
Yeah. My heroes in the book world, I don't know if you want me to mention specific names or stuff, but BookBub has just been my, the thing that has made my author career. Once I got in with them and could do their featured deals every month, that's just, that's totally changed my career. But it took a long time to get them to accept my books. So
That was actually my next question. What has been your best marketing tactic over the years?
I do a promo every month where I either give a book away for free or I I significantly discount the price. And I think that's how I've built a readership is just, you give it when you write series, you give away a book and then hopefully people want to read all the other books in your series. And the more books you have in a series, the more, the better that works. But that's been my main thing. And I started out with very small sites because they were the only ones that would accept my books. And I'd always heard that BookBub was probably the gold standard of that kind of advertising. And, so I just worked my way and they kept turning me down and I kept sending my books in and they kept turning me down, kept sending my books in. And, finally, when they accepted that first book, now they accept everyone I send in. So you get to that point where that works. That works for me is to have a promo and I've gotten to the point now that I do the featured deals all the time that I don't do a lot of other stuff. I mean, I went through you got to do Twitter, you got to do Facebook, you got to do Threads, you got to do TikTok, you got to
Oh,
do all that stuff. And I drove myself nuts. And I don't know. And I mean, I build an audience on those platforms and I still have them, but I'm not real good at putting something on there all the time now. I don't do every day anymore. I just, because I don't know how many actual sales you got from those, at least for me. Social media was never the way I got all kinds of always wanted to go viral on TikTok. And the only posts I've ever had go viral on TikTok are posts that have nothing to do with writing. So I'm not sure it got me any readers.
oh. Well, I appreciate your perseverance with, BookBub and your promotions and everything. And yeah, I mean, social media is such a
Yeah.
drag sometimes. And I can't imagine like if, yeah, there are some authors that they really make it work because they go viral and they're so successful. Like their social media profile is successful. Therefore, people find and buy their
Yes.
books because they're like, this is one of my favorite influencers. But I feel like with a lot of authors, it sounds like, yeah, just getting your book in front of many eyes is possible. And one way to do that is, yeah, promotions, because if there's a sale or if there's something for free, people eat that up.
Well, I mean, I even do it, and I'm an author. And sometimes I feel
Yeah.
guilty. I should be
Yeah,
paying.
no, I'm the same way.
I should be paying for these authors' books, but I'll do it. So, if I do a free promo, I can get 50, 60,000 people to download, not read it. Some of them don't ever read it, but download my book and it gets it out there in
Yeah.
front of people. And that seems to help me. And I'm not, there's people like Colleen Hoover who, TikTok, that's what made her. She went viral on
Yeah.
TikTok. And I mean, she's got all these movies now and all these books. And I mean, she she figured out how to do TikTok. She figured out how to go viral, but I haven't figured that out.
Yeah, no,
I
I
think she's a very rare example. I mean, I wish we could all do that and go viral on TikTok
yes.
and get to the point where we're selling millions and millions and millions of books. But it's possible. I haven't figured that out. So TikTok's kind of confusing to me.
Yeah, I'm not even on TikTok anymore. I gave up on that a while ago.
I tried Twitter. I gave up on that. Facebook. I'm on Facebook, but they don't send my post to anybody. I have a couple thousand followers and they send it to like three people. And so I still use it because I've got some old followers, some of my people that have read my books since I started writing that's all they do is TikTok and they follow me. So I still put posts, but not very often. Threads is the one I use more than anything right now. I do enjoy that. They've got a good author community. The thing I like
Mm.
about Threads is I never get posts from anything else. I just get posts about authors because it's got a really good algorithm. I
Oh,
get posts about authors and
that's
posts about
nice.
dogs because I do post pictures of my dog. And that's it. They don't feed me all the other junk. So I am active on that, but I don't have a lot of followers. I think I get some readers from like interacting with people on that site, but I probably use that one more than anything else right now. But I don't really enjoy it. I don't really enjoy social media.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't blame you on that. I'm with you. I'm really mostly active on Blue Sky right now, but not too many people are on there and
Yes.
it's similar to Threads in the sense that like the algorithm caters to whatever you want to see and you can join different communities and you only see those posts. So that's why I like that because I don't
Yeah.
want any of the other filler
Well,
stuff.
I think I have a Blue Sky account. I think I set one up when I first started Threads and I started seeing Blue Sky was the place to be and people started talking about it. But I don't think I've ever gone on there and done anything. So
Oh, yeah.
it's just that, like I say, it's just too much to do it all.
It is. It absolutely is. And you can't be everywhere. Like when social media was really booming and the indie author space was really kicking off, everybody was like, you have to be everywhere.
Yes.
If you're an author, you have to like reach your readers on all these different social media platforms and have your email list and your website and this, that, and the other. And really, you just need to be in
Yeah.
like one, maybe two spots and people will come to you, they will follow you, and you don't have to put in that much effort.
I do like making TikTok videos. That's kind of fun, but it is time consuming too. So
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. Yeah, it
Yes.
takes away that writing time and that, I mean, but I mean, you said it earlier, as an indie author, you spend more time marketing
Yeah.
your books than you actually do writing.
The way the world is.
Yes, yeah. But speaking of writing, what does your writing routine look like?
So it's different than I thought it might be. I really thought that I would be more productive in the mornings and that I would write more in the mornings because then, get sleepy by the middle of the afternoon or whatever. But I have found to write, I think you write anything, but to write about my little towns, I've got to be there. I've got to immerse myself in that town. I've got to set aside a few hours to really feel like I'm in Pine Meadows, which is a town I'm writing about now. So I found that I had a real hard time doing that in the morning because my brain was going 100 different directions. Like I'd say, oh gosh, I need to go to the grocery store and get
Hmm.
groceries, or I better go out and mow my lawn, or, I need to do some laundry, or I need to do marketing. I haven't done the marketing for this book. And my brain was going so many different directions that it was hard to totally immerse myself in my books. So now I've kind of gotten into this pattern where I do everything else in the morning, including marketing. So a lot of it is author related, but anything else I need to do in my life, because then by about noon, I can get rid of all that stuff and unclutter my brain and I can sit down and immerse myself in writing. So I do most of my actual writing like between noon and 5 p.m. in the afternoons because then my mind is clear of other things and I can concentrate on writing.
Do you actually sit at your desk for 5 hours straight and work on your book every day?
Well, no, not straight. I mean, I get up and walk around,
Oh, okay.
but I do sit there, and it's not every day, but I do sit and write for at least a couple hours every afternoon or several hours. Yeah.
Okay. I was just gonna say, I was like, oh, you're making me look bad.
But I do focus on the writing part in the afternoon.
That makes a lot of sense because there are some. I'm an early bird. I don't know about
I'm
you.
not.
Um, oh, you're not. Okay. Because I find it easier to get my writing done in the morning, but also I get what you mean when your brain is going a mile a minute and you're like, here's a list of all the things that I have to do today. And then sometimes I sit down and I just have to squeeze the writing in for 20 minutes. And then I say, okay, I got to go switch the laundry now.
Right.
I got to do this and I got to do that. And then I'll sit down. And it really, some days it makes my writing more productive because I'm taking frequent breaks from my writing. And then there are other days where I only write a sentence or two and I don't even know what the sentence I wrote is like incohesive, you know? So I think it's nice that you found a nice rhythm for yourself and you know that you have to declutter your brain before you can sit down and give your characters the attention that they deserve.
Yeah, and that's just what's worked for me. And I just find I'm not very, I don't, when I go back and, read what I've just written, if I only write for, and sometimes I do, but if I've only written for 20 minutes, a half an hour, I don't feel it's as good because I don't feel like I've immersed myself in my location
Mm.
by doing that. I need to block out a larger period of time. And sometimes, I mean, it's not always 5 hours. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 2 hours, depending on the day and what I've got going on. And that's one reason I like being, self-published because I'm not on anybody else's deadline. And so I can,
Yeah.
I don't write on vacation. Some, you read about these big authors that, they're always writing, they're on vacation and they've got their laptop and they're writing their story. I don't. When I take time off or when I go down to Denver to see my grandkids, I don't write. So I take days off and I give myself permission to do that.
Good.
So I don't have a
Good.
laptop. I'm probably the last remaining person in this world that doesn't have a laptop. I have a desktop
Oh, that's
computer.
awesome.
I sit in my office. That's the only place I write. So I'm in my office writing or I'm doing other things. So I don't have a laptop that I'm even tempted to take with me and write when I'm doing other things.
I love that for you. That's so nice.
It's very dinosaurish. Everybody,
You know where that line is.
I do a lot of things where people are like, just bring your laptop. I'm like, I don't have a laptop. Not like non-writer related things. I don't have a laptop, but sorry, can't bring it.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that. When you sit down to write your stories, do you outline at all, or do you just sit down and write?
I'm a pantser.
You are. Okay.
I outlined more than I did when I started out. When I started out, it was just totally, start writing the
Yeah.
story, I have no idea where it's going to go. I mean, now I'm probably across a little bit, but I'm not. I have friends that are plotters, and I wouldn't write if I had to do that. I mean, I have friends that have,
Mhm.
boards and sticky notes, and they have every chapter totally outlined. I mean, their story is written before they sit down to write chapter one. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think they say it's about 50-50 split as far as authors between pantsers and plotters,
Mm.
but I can't do that. I hate that stuff. So I, but I do have a general, more of an idea than I used to. I maybe loosely plot something out before I write, but sometimes that changes halfway through my book. I mean, I know where I'm going to end. I know where I start out. I know some different plot points throughout the book.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, it's funny too, because the more you write, the more you realize what your voice is and what your writing style is. So you kind of figure out like, do I need to outline? Don't I need to outline? And you find what works for you over time.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what works for me. I can't plot a book to save my life or not seriously plot a book. I don't want to do it. I don't enjoy it.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't because there are pe so many pantsers that they do. They really just need to sit down and get the words out, and they'll make sense of it later.
Yeah. And I have a lot of friends that really enjoy plotting a book. I mean, they love that. They love being so detailed and getting everything plotted out, but that's not me.
Yeah, and hey, that's okay. Now, before we wrap up, will you please share more about your Montana Pines series?
Okay, that's my latest series I'm writing right now. It takes place in a small town called Pine Meadows. There's eight books, I think, eight books in the series. I'm working on book nine. It's a small town, 3,000 people, set in southwestern Montana. I just, after a while, I thought I've written too many books in Colorado. I need to write a book about somewhere else. But I didn't want to totally change what I wrote. So I had this town was in a couple of my earlier books, just on a very like small basis. Like one of my characters was from this town. Another characters ended up in this town at the very end of the book. So this town already existed. So I switched to this little town in Montana, and it's very similar to my books in Colorado, but it's a lot of cowboys. There's a big resort in this town where a lot of my stories take place. It's a small town where everybody knows everybody. I just like to write those stories.
I enjoy those types of stories where everybody knows everybody. Yeah.
You were talking about reading mysteries. So my latest, well, not my latest, the most recent book I wrote was a Christmas book. So besides the one I'm writing on now, and I write a Christmas book every year, but the one before that is called Montana Pines Search for Love. And that was, you were talking about mysteries. That was kind of fun. I went to a seminar with a lady that was in my writers group about how to write a mystery and about how, you had to have the red herrings and the clues and all that stuff in to write a good mystery. And she's a well-published author by a big publishing house. And she was talking about writing mysteries. And I thought that sounds like fun. So this one is a romance, but I had a couple mysteries going on throughout the book. A couple
Oh, cool.
a couple people, each the heroine and heroine were trying to find somebody from their past, and they didn't know where they were, and it all kind of converges at the end. But that was fun. If I could come up since then, I thought should do another book like that, but now I've got to come up with another idea to do it for a romance. But I like that. It was fun. I had fun writing it. I think it's a fun story. So to
Oh,
just try
good.
and
Yeah.
weave it all together and then, send it out to my beta readers and people that read for me and see if they, I wanted to figure out when they figured out what was going on and was I doing it right? I think I did it okay. But that was fun to write. So, maybe I could write a mystery, but I would probably try and write another romance if I can come up with some other ideas to kind of weave that kind of thing into my romances.
I'm sure you will come up with more ideas. You seem to be full of them. which
I
is great.
try. I lay in
Yeah.
bed at night and come up with ideas and then forget half of them by the next
Ugh,
morning. I think
I
all
know,
us
that's the
authors do
worst.
that. I come up with great scenes and then I get up the next morning and go, what was that scene I was going to write? I don't know.
Yeah. That's why you got to keep a notepad on your nightstand.
Oh, I know. People have told me that. I've never done that. I probably should.
Now, your Montana Pine series, is that the type of series that somebody should start with book one and read in order, or could you pick up any book to
You can
read
pick
it?
up any book, and all my series are like that. I mean,
Oh,
they're all
okay.
individual love stories, individual romances in each book. So you can read any one, but the characters pop back in. So it's more fun. I tell people, if you really want to read, if you want to read a bunch of my books, start with the first book because then you'll see the progression of characters and you'll see the characters pop back in.
Yeah.
And I think that's more fun, but any of them is standalone.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good to know. I mean, me personally, I always start with book one regardless, because that's just my
Yeah.
personal preference, but that is good to know.
And people like to do that. One of my favorite things about doing promos, like if I do the BookBub promos, I love to go on and watch what happens with my sales on Amazon.
Yeah.
And you see like all these people download the book you're promoting, and then a week later, all these people are downloading the next book in the series, and then the next book in the series, and then the next book. And you can watch the readers track and jump, from book to book to book. And you're seeing these people are going through your series. And I just think that's fun. it's cool. And that's the point. That's the point of doing the promos. So, so my first three series are in Colorado. Talking about Colorado and Montana, but I've written more books there. But the first book, the lady comes to town and she ends up in this little town of 100 people because I wanted her to get stranded there. And she goes and sits in this little cafe. And the owner of the cafe is this lady named Violet. And everybody loved Violet. I just made her kind of quirky. She was in her 60s and she's the town gossip. She's the town matchmaker.
Mm.
And so then the second book I wrote about her because people wanted her story. But she appears in all 26 of my first books because everybody loved her. So she comes back and has some kind of role and credits herself with all the romances. I'm not sure she had anything to do with some of the romance, but she credits herself with all the romances in all 26 books. So that was fun. And that's a series thing. And so if you read the series, you get to love Violet and you get to wait. People watch for when she jumps into the story because um, they know she's going to be in every story. But I don't have a character similar to that in my Montana Pine series, which is too bad because I really like that character. Maybe I should have done somebody like that in Montana. But so that's the advantage of reading a series through. But you can pick up any of my books and just read them. They're full stories. You're not gonna like say, I don't know what's going on because I didn't read the books before that in the series.
Okay. No, that's great. And Violet sounds fascinating.
I loved her. She's my favorite character. I think she's
Yeah.
most of my readers' favorite character. She was just so fun to develop. I mean, she started out as this lady that ran this cafe, but then over the years I made her into, she was the matchmaker and then, she was just the gossip. She knew everything. If you wanted to know what was going on in the county, you went to talk to Violet and she knew what was
Yeah.
going on and she was fun to write.
Oh, I love that.
I always picture she'd be great, if they made my, series into a Netflix show or something. Not that that'll ever happen, but she'd be a great character.
Oh, yeah. She'd be like the showstopper.
They'd have to cast that role really well because she'd be a fun character to write.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for sharing more about your work and your books. Will you please let our listeners know more about you and where they can find your work?
Okay, well, I'm exclusive to Amazon, so all my books are in KU. If people don't know what that is, the Kindle Unlimited library where you can go and, if you belong to Kindle Unlimited, you can read all my books for free or buy them on Amazon. So that's where to find me. JillHaymakerWrites.com is my website. So that was my handle on all social media. So I ended up switching companies. My website actually is hosted through BookBub now, which is it was just with like WordPress or somebody that wasn't specific to authors. And then when BookBub opened up websites as to host websites, I thought I'm going to go with somebody that really cares about authors. So anyway, I switched it to JillHaymakerWrites.com. All my books are there. You can see, the links are all there, but they're all on Amazon.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much.
You're welcome. It was great.
Thank you again for joining us on the podcast, and all of Jill's information will be in the description below. But before we leave, I have one more quick question for you, Jill. Do you prefer coffee or tea?
Unfortunately, tea. Coffee. I say that because I love coffee. For many, many years, I drank 5, 6 cups at least of coffee a day. I love the taste of
Oh
coffee,
my
but it
God.
doesn't like me. It started giving me heart. I have acid reflux. It doesn't like me. I can't drink decaf or
Oh
any kind of
yeah.
coffee. So I switched to tea. So I'm sitting here drinking tea. I drink tea all the time now. I don't drink coffee anymore. I would still rather have a good, strong cup of coffee, but it's not part of my life for the last 10 or 15 years. So
Well, that is really sad, and I'm sorry to hear that, but you'll make Ari very, very happy because
yeah,
I'm team coffee, she is team tea,
he's
and
team
I mean
tea.
she's not here, so she doesn't even really need to know about this.
Won't even tell her about the tea.
Yeah, no.
Starbucks matcha lattes are on my to-go thing most mornings. I
Oh, really?
there's a Starbucks less than a half mile from my house. So I
Oh,
spend a
nice.
lot of the money I make writing buying Starbucks matcha tea every morning. So,
Hey, something's got to
keeps me
fuel these
going.
books, right?
Yep.
Alrighty. Well, it was a pleasure to meet you. And once again, all of Jill's links will be in the description below. So please be sure to go check out her work and give her a shout out in the comments. Remember, we release a new episode every Wednesday. Next week, we're discussing creating a book launch roadmap. So to ensure you don't miss it, hit the subscribe button on your way out. And if you'd like to learn more about us, check out our website at themerrywriterpodcast.podbean.com and also our coffee page for more content. Thank you for listening to the Mary Writer Podcast. We'll see you next week. This podcast is brought to you by New Ideas. We're easily distracted. The music titled Inspired is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.